Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold exploration and development today, as well as potentially a touch on lithium exploration as well. We will hear from Jason Bahnsen, President and CEO of Tempus Resources Limited. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss some fine print. During this Tempus webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Tempus corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, tempusresources.com.au. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Tempus. So we have Tempus presenting today. The company has a portfolio of projects in British Columbia, Ecuador, and evaluating some projects in Manitoba. The flagship is the Elizabeth Black Dome project in BC, where the company has been drilling high-grade gold veins in a past-producing mining district. The company also has gold and copper exploration properties located near operating mines in Ecuador. With that, I now turn it over to Jason to update our audience on the company.
Thank you, Tim, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, so it's a great opportunity to present update the current story. We've discussed the disclaimer, snapshot on the market cap, share price is 2 cents. It's it's a part of the current sort of market, about $8 million sort of market cap right now. Let's just jump into the project. Recently, last week, we announced the potential acquisition of some lithium projects in Manitoba. These came to us through our sort of corporate network, looked very interesting. They're privately held, and we've signed a heads of agreement. We're doing some due diligence on them now. They're in central Manitoba, close to the sort of Snow Lake, the Paw area, an area quite well known for lithium, with some other entrants. There's an Australian company, Lewin Metals, with a property around Cross Lake, and several others in the area. So we have 2 projects that we're currently evaluating. One's called White Rabbit, about 70 square kilometers, and one called Cormorant, a little bit larger, about 190 square kilometers. Now, White Rabbit has some known outcropping of pegmatite that the Geological Survey had previously mapped many years ago. So we've done one site visit to that initially, and our head geologist is headed out there again this week to take as many samples as possible and do some detailed mapping. I'll just go on to the individual. Oh, just one moment. The Cormorant project, there's 20 drill holes. This is the one on the left side of the map. 20 historic drill holes. There's 7 drilling campaigns from the 70s up until 2006 by Hudson Bay Mining and others, all for base metals evaluation, and they didn't do any assays for lithium or lithium bearing minerals, and so we're evaluating that. But what we see on that Cormorant project, some very large sections of pegmatite dikes. So here's the terms of the deal, just very briefly. Our total exposure right now is $25,000 right now. That's it. That we've paid $25,000 as an exclusivity arrangement. We have exclusivity on it until the 30th of October, unless we extend that. That gives us an opportunity to get some assays back from the rock chip samples that we've taken at White Rabbit already. So we got a rush on those. So we have to make a decision the 30th of October. Whether we're going to continue with these projects. And at the time we exercise the option, we would have to issue to the vendors a little more than roughly 10% of the company. So we're in a due diligence phase. Once we exercise the option, then there's a few other sort of milestones that are geared to really success of the project and the identification of sort of commercial grades of lithium. Just jumping in on sort of White Rabbit, it is about 40 kilometers from, you see on this one map, from Cross Lake and this Lewin Metals sort of property, where they have had very good success in identifying over 1% sort of lithium in the historic drill holes that they're working on. So this is one of the reasons we think it is very sort of prospective. There's several outcropping of pegmatite observed within a granitic pegmatite body. The zones of pegmatite are up to 2.5 kilometers in length, with up to 600 meters in width. This is some of the shots. One of the things, you see the pegmatite in that center photo, it's quite dispersed within the granite, which is a little bit different than what we see at sort of Cormorant. So we've taken some samples, and we're getting those rushed through analysis right now. So we're looking for spodumene. We haven't seen it. It might be finer crystals, but we haven't seen it there yet. But we'll find out. The Cormorant project, which is about 100 kilometers away from White Rabbit, and these are all in great jurisdiction or location for infrastructure. Both projects are just adjacent to railway lines, power lines. Obviously, the region there between Flin Flon and Snow Lake is a large greenstone belt with lots of historic mining. Snow Lake and others for gold, base metals, and other minerals. Now, there's 20 historic drill holes on this Cormorant project. As I said, that were done from the early 70s up until, I think, 2006. One of the things that's interesting about Manitoba is they store a lot of the core, and in the drill logs that we have obtained, we're still digging through historical information. We have drill logs for 6 of these drill holes, and as you can see, very wide intersections of pegmatite haven't been sampled for lithium, assayed for lithium as yet. But you take the one hole that's in the middle of this picture, 180-2, that drill hole's a little over 100 meters in length, and 95 meters, and it has 75 meters of pegmatite. So certainly the structure of the rocks is there, and we see feldspar quartz. We're looking for spodumene, of course, and but all this core, this particular core, is located within the Manitoba stores. They have several core libraries, Flin Flon, the Paw, Thompson, where they store historic core, and it's available for inspection. So our geologists were able, on the initial due diligence site visit, go into the core library in the PA and have a good look at the core. And it's kind of hard to see in these pictures, but this shows the sort of wide zones of pegmatite diking. We're going through a process where we're applying to take a quarter or half some of this core for assay. This is what some of the other players in this sector in Manitoba have been successful in doing that. And we're looking for the other core. Certainly the core that was drilled by Hudson Bay and some of the others will have been stored. So it takes a bit of detective work to dig this down, and our geologists are headed back, as I said, to Manitoba this week, and they're spending some time with the Manitoba Geological Survey group and just digging, finding out where the core is, etc. The other in this particular drill hole, there's two sections that were previously assayed by the Canadian Geological Survey, and we're trying to find where there's two about 6-inch sections that are blocked out in this core. So we're looking for those assays as well. So all this will, as we find this information, we'll disclose it. But as you can see in the 6 drill holes we have, there is a significant amount of sort of pegmatite rocks there, which may bear lithium. So just on the lithium, we're just dipping our toe into it. We thought we'd diversify a little bit, given the opportunity came to us through our sort of corporate network. Obviously the market hasn't been wonderful for gold miners, and we thought we'll diversify a little bit. And we've just raised, are in the process of completing a private placement where we raised $740,000 in Australia. And why that number is, one, we didn't want to issue too much at this sort of price, and it just gives us sufficient funding to keep moving forward, do work on these projects, and continue on the Black Dome at Elizabeth as well. So that's a snapshot on the Manitoba Lithium. We'll certainly be coming back to the market with an update on this next site visit, and then leading up to the decision on the option agreement at the end of October. So unless we mutually agree to extend that. But we're working hard on that and trying to get the due diligence out of the way and make a decision. Now, I want to turn back to Elizabeth Black Dome, which is our flagship project in southern British Columbia, right beside Talisker, as you see. That's been and others. I think some of you may be familiar with this story. We love the jurisdiction. Black Dome has an existing mill on it, a 200-ton per day mill that we could bring. We've done a bit of engineering work. We could bring that back on stream in a short period of time for a nominal amount of capital. And we've been drilling on this Elizabeth project, which is 30 kilometers to the south of Black Dome, on our contiguous group of claims. We've drilled 20,000 meters at Black Dome, or at Elizabeth, and got some great results over the past couple of years. We are working on the resource for Black Dome Elizabeth right now. It's taken some time. Our resource consultants were up on site yesterday with our geologists doing their final inspection in terms of visually inspecting the core, looking at the drill sites, taking a few samples themselves. So we're on track to, we're going to receive the initial resource numbers on the 6th of this month. So in 2 days' time. At this point in time, they're very tight-lipped. I don't know. They haven't given me any indication of what those are yet. So we're anticipating a healthy number. I mean, we're starting with approximately 200,000 ounces at Elizabeth in the previous 2009 resource estimate, and we've done a lot of drilling with a lot of sort of high grade. And we've really, what that initial resource from 2009 was primarily just based on one vein, the southwest vein, held about 140 of that 206,000 ounce resources. And then they had some in this west and main vein. Now, since acquiring the project, we've done a lot of drilling on the southwest vein, extended that on strike, extended that at depth with some great intersections. We've discovered the blue vein, the number 9 vein, and you may recall, some grades we've released in the past year, 28 grams over 28.5 meters. This is very, very high grade, and that's what really makes this sort of interesting. So we've been waiting patiently to get this sort of finalized on the resource. This is what it looks like on a sort of long section in terms based on our current drilling. So we have now at least 6 veins that are developed and should contribute to our resource statement. And you can see here's just a list of some of the intersections we've announced, and they're absolutely spectacular. There's 70 grams over 5 meters, 60 over 5. There's a blue vein, lots of intersections up to several hundred grams per ton. The number 9 vein, here's the intersection I mentioned that we drilled in 2022, 28.1 grams over 28.5 meters. So it's very, very high grade. There's all this drilling has been, if you look at this geophysics map here, has just been at Elizabeth, Maine. Now, this year, we decided not to. We have some drilling lined up, 4,000 meters of drilling planned, which would cost in the order of $1.2 million plus, other costs. And, that would be quite dilutive. So we thought, let's get the resource out, see what this really looks like, and then we'll come back to the drilling. So what we did this year at Elizabeth, we did quite a comprehensive sampling and mapping program. We looked at this Elizabeth East area that had been something identified by a previous soil anomaly from a survey done in 2019. And, we've got some good in soils, some good results there, several grams. 5 grams, 1 gram, several grams that are very anomalous from a soils point of view. And we think there's several more vein sets we may be able to identify at Elizabeth East. And then also we looked at an extension to the northwest of this Elizabeth, Maine. So, the project continues to increase in scale, which is important, where this shows backdropped against the geophysical structure that shows a very large intrusive porphyry, which is what hosts these sort of gold veins. And so all this is adding together. We've done the geophysics on the bigger picture. We've now doing sort of soils and following up, and we're thinking we're identifying multiple areas similar to the Elizabeth, Maine area that we have been drilling. So it continues to sort of grow in scope, and this is underpinned by we have the Black Dome mill, and as I mentioned, this had been operated for a period of sort of 5 years. There's only 300,000 tons of ore put through the mill. It's 1991, 30 something years old, it is in almost as new condition. So it's been mothballed well, and we've done quite a bit of engineering work looking at bringing this back online. And it's about a 6-month sort of startup period. So once we confirm that we have a mineable resource at Elizabeth, and then we're going to again push through on the other infrastructure items. We'll announce the rehabilitation of the mill. We'll be looking at the Hall Road connection between the Elizabeth deposit 30 km to the south and this mill. And we're also, this mill is quite a valuable asset, mill and a fully compliant tailings dam in British Columbia. So we're getting inquiries from other groups that have deposits and don't have a mill. So we're starting to look at that as well, what makes sense in terms of partnerships, toll treaty, anything like that. But it's very early stage in those sort of discussions, but it is a very valuable sort of asset to have. And we've done metallurgical work that confirms that the ore from Elizabeth and from the Black Dome deposit area, we get over 95% recovery. So once we do have a mineable deposit, it really is a near-term sort of startup scenario that we could move along. Black Dome, this is just a snapshot of the deposit at Black Dome. In 2020, we did some drilling there, 5,000 meters. We want to return to Black Dome at one point. We think there is some upside below the previous stopes and to the northwest. But, at the moment, that's all within our existing sort of mining lease and where the mill is. Tim mentioned we have projects in Ecuador where we haven't been working them too much this year because we've been focusing on Elizabeth. They're in a fantastic location right beside Fruta del Norte, Lundin's operating gold mine. Valley de Tigra, 2,000 hectares, very prospective for copper porphyry. We did soils on it last year and the year before. We see copper mineralization, chalcopyrite, as well as gold and real zarza. Ecuador it's highly endowed from a mineral point of view. A little bit of instability. They're going through various sort of election cycles now, and we've decided just not to at this moment allocate as much of our exploration dollars to Ecuador. We're focusing on the projects in Canada. So that's basically, I just kind of hit the sort of highlights. Happy to jump into it in any more detail for parties. I don't know if we have any questions. Is that too quick, Tim?
No, that's great. Straight to the point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for the informative presentation. We'll now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. And we do have a question or two already. One very popular question: how much cash does the company have, and would you need to raise more money for ongoing exploration work?
We just raised $740,000 Australian, and that's we're just waiting for TSX approval on that this week to close. So we have about $700,000 or $800,000 in the bank coming up, and that, with that'll give us quite a bit of sort of runway. Certainly doing all this work in Manitoba is not high cost work, sampling and mapping and that sort of thing. And we would, to do more drilling at any location, we would need to come back to the market, and we would like to do that at a healthier share price. So let's get the resource out. We're anticipating a good number there, and see how the market reacts to that. And then we'll do our planning for next year and look at sort of capital raises later this year, early next year.
Great. A couple of questions on the lithium side of things. Would the acquisition of the lithium projects impact interest from investors who seek exposure to high-grade gold mineralization, which Elizabeth has but is quite rare these days?
Well, it's always a sort of question. Do you keep with one particular asset, or do you diversify a little bit? One of the positives about the acquisition, potential acquisition of the lithium in Manitoba, that would give us, we can work on that all year round. And typically in Manitoba, when that Cormorant project was drilled in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was all done in the winter. So as opposed to Black Dome Elizabeth, because of its elevation in the mountains, we haven't been able to work efficiently in the winter. So, and that impacts our sort of news flow, which tends to impact on the sort of market. The investors like things happening. So yeah, it's a question. I think we're giving investors exposure to both opportunities, but the primary focus, the primary value of the company right now is Elizabeth Black Dome. Absolutely.
Great. We did have a similar question, and kind of following up on that, but you've touched on already. But if you do option the lithium projects, how much focus would shift, and how much of your resources would shift to those projects rather than the gold?
Well, we're not going to take our foot off the gold project at all. We're continuing to plow forward. The lithium is it's quite early stage project, so the work stream there would start out with either rock sampling or soils. There's been a lot of use of mobile metal ion sampling of those lithium projects there. We may look at some geophysics in the form of magnetometer has worked in some cases with drones, but all those activities are relatively low cost. So in terms of dollars and time, I put the ratio at 80-20, 80 Elizabeth, 20 at the moment. So this early stage work, until we see what's going on, develop drill targets for Manitoba, both in terms of dollars spent and management time. You know, it would be much more focused on Black Dome Elizabeth.
Okay, great. Looking at Black Dome, what would be required to bring the Black Dome mill back into operation?
Well, we've done some work. We haven't been able to fully discuss it to the market because the ASX in Australia decided they wanted to see a resource before we started talking about the mill. But we've done quite a bit of engineering work on that with desktop level, but with two groups, one JDS Engineering in Vancouver, and in conjunction with the Optimize Group, which is a mineral processing specialist consultancy group. So we've looked at taking that existing mill, and the configuration of the mill is the previous operation was gravity, going to a small sort of flotation, and they were producing both a gold doré from the gravity and a high-grade con. We could start it in that configuration for, you know, we're saying less than $5 million is the capital cost to bring that back into production. We've been suggested it could be done within about a 6-month sort of period. The tailings dam is fully compliant. We just just completed the annual safety inspection of that dam, and in the past couple of weeks, and in that it also that the dam, when it was previously when it was owned by Sona Resources, they put a lift on that dam that enables us about 2 years of production out of that existing dam capacity. So we don't need to spend any money on the dam. So it's purely on the mill, and say less than $5 million, bring that up into operational phase, 6 months thereabouts. We also have to connect the road to connect the Elizabeth deposit to the mill at Black Dome. So in terms of timing and dollars, it's extremely efficient, and it's in good shape. It's a very good weatherproof building. They've inspected the ball mills, everything that's existing there. The crushers are all there. The ball mills, the gen sets, some very large diesel gen sets. So that really limits the amount of capital we would spend. The only thing we would add to the mill circuit, and this was planned by the previous owners as well, is to add a Nelson concentrator just to improve the recovery a little bit more. So and then our plan would be to, and we've done metallurgical tests that we see 95% recovery in that existing circuit. We've also explored the ability to expand that mill, looked at a variety of scenarios, 200 ton a day, 500 ton a day, which is really adding a larger sort of ball mill. We've done some work in looking at the adding a environmentally friendly cyanidization back end, where you would produce 100% gold on site rather than a concentrate. And that may be something our plan would be to likely get it going in its current configuration, the lowest sort of capex, and then bootstrap the expansion of the mill from cash flow. So but of course we need the mineable resource first, so we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. So, you know, one of the good things about this project, we've been able to move some of the engineering work along concurrently with our drilling. Now we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in that way, but it certainly will compress the sort of time frame once we have the resource. So the key items left on the engineering front would be the road to connect it. We got a pretty good handle on the mill now, and once we have the deposit, we'll be pushing forward on finalizing all that engineering as well. So with a mineable deposit, it is a realistic, couple year to 1 to 2 year path to sort of cash flow. We got to develop the mine as well, which could take up to a sort of year. It's a relatively small mine. But we still don't know whether some of it would be amenable to surface mining. We do see a lot of near surface gold mineralization at Blue Vein, number 9 vein. That might be a quick way to bootstrap things as well while we develop an underground mine that mines these veins at depth. So it is a little bit too early stage to be planning these things, but we do have conceptually, we've been thinking about all these sort of plans.
Great. And following up there, would you plan to do any drilling at Black Dome? And could that mine be brought back into production?
We think there is more upside there. And a couple of years ago, we had Jeffrey Hendenquist, who's a very famous epithermal geologist, mostly internationally. He came to site, looked at the core, and Black Dome is an epithermal setting, so there's a vertical sort of horizon or sweet spot above the boiling point, and we're trying to ascertain where we are in relation to that. When Jeffrey looked at the quartz textures and things like that in the drill core, he thinks we're quite high up in the system. Now, we've been focusing on Elizabeth the last couple of years. Let's get that deposit sort of pinned down, and then we certainly would be coming back and doing more drilling at Black Dome to see if we can find extensions of that at depth. Hendenquist thought the below the existing stopes, as I showed in the presentation, was good potential, and there is some historically some indicated 50,000 ounces of indicated around that the old stopes there. So ideally we get Elizabeth going, or from Elizabeth we had Black Dome, and this is why we've looked at the mill expansion scenarios up to 500 ton a day for that purpose.
Okay, great. Now, you had mentioned the mineral resource estimate for Elizabeth. What sort of work is still left to be completed for that resource estimate?
Oh, we're at the sort of final stages. So today as part of this, they run stope optimization software on. So they're taking because of the nature of the deposit here. It's very structurally driven, and these are vertical veins. So they've been looking at each vein and mapping it out, and now they're doing stope optimization on that vein. I hope that means there's some indicated ore or something that's going to be part of this. They haven't shared any numbers with us yet. I have a meeting on Friday, which will get the initial numbers, or maybe a bit of iteration while some of those things are finalized, if there's any outstanding questions. And we should be in a position to announce some initial numbers by the end of next week, I'm hoping. Then we would file the NI 43-101 within 45 days after that. So, so we're excited. We've been waiting a long time, as have shareholders, for these numbers. So, They won't tell me. They're scared I'm going to talk about them, I think. I don't know. I'll find out this week. So
Great.
Yeah.
One question. Are there any drilling results outstanding or anything, or have all assays from drilling at Elizabeth Black Dome been announced?
Everything's been in. All the assays, we're not waiting for anything from Elizabeth Black Dome. It was all announced. We're waiting on the assays of these just rock chip samples we took for due diligence purposes. They're in the lab right now, and like I say, we're taking some more samples there in Manitoba next week. Turnaround times on the labs has certainly improved, I think, over the last year or something. That is something that had plagued us previously, and ended up stretching out results announcements. Great.
And a shift a little bit here to Ecuador. How much would you anticipate? How much work would you anticipate doing in Ecuador in the next year?
Well, we're want to see Ecuador sort of get a little bit more sort of stabilized. It's not a low cost jurisdiction to operate in. There's sort of high costs. There's a lot of reporting requirements in Ecuador. We've kind of cut back on our team in Ecuador. We're minimizing costs, and we don't. plan to spend anything on Ecuador over the next 12 months anyways. It certainly is, we certainly believe our Valley de Tigre is sort of attractive from a copper porphyry point of view. But we've decided that we get more bang for our buck, I guess you could say, with the drilling at Elizabeth and others, rather than pushing a lot of dollars into Ecuador. So right now it's on a sort of care and maintenance basis, and let's see what happens when we'll come back to Ecuador. We like the potential for copper there as well. So yeah, we haven't made any final decisions on Ecuador, but not planning to spend any capital on it in the immediate future.
Okay. And would you potentially look for partners or to sell the projects in Ecuador?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been, looking at that. Ecuador. I think, we had one of the presidential candidates was assassinated there a couple of months ago, and they're going through an election process. So that those sort of events don't make people rush into wanting to partner with us in Ecuador. But from the technical point of view, the projects are very, very, very good, and we'd love to partner that off. And I think that would make a lot of sense that we option that off, and then we focus 100% on Black Dome, Elizabeth, and these other projects we're looking at, and retain some upside to Ecuador via royalty option agreement, that sort of thing. But we would like to kind of put that in someone else's hands to progress, and that gives us more capacity to keep focusing on Elizabeth, Black Dome, and others, while we retain some upside in Ecuador.
Okay, great. And one question here, where are you in the mineral claim application process for the new lithium projects?
Yeah, they've all been submitted several months ago. We're anticipating over the next month that those claims would be awarded. They're just going through the normal sort of process. So it takes about 3 months, I find. And so we maybe over the next few weeks, we're talking to our vendors, our partners that put the applications in. And we're hoping, let's say by end of November. I don't want to put dates out there. Right. That I can't control with the Manitoba government. Yes.
Right. All right, great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. Kind of just to review what key news items might we look forward to from Tempus in the coming weeks?
Well, the big one is the resource estimate. I mean, this is what we've been working on, the last few years, all the drilling, everything driving towards the resource estimate. That's going to give us a very good indication on this sort of project. If it's a nice robust number, well, then we'll be pushing forward on the engineering, and talking more about moving towards production. And then the lithium, certainly a news flow. By the end of the month, we have to make a decision on that, and I want to see what these rocks indicate. Certainly, if there was a good percentage of lithium, 1 to 2 grams in some of these samples, I think that's pretty exciting news for the market, and may drive the share price as well. We'll see.
Great. Well, I would like to again thank Jason Bahnsen for presenting today, and thank you everyone on the line for tuning in. Just a reminder, Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow afternoon when our webinar series continues with Ucore Rare Metals presenting Thursday, October 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.